welcome to today's episode of Candid Kaya. Are you interested in one day becoming a journalist? Perhaps you're the next Barbara Walters or Soledad O'Brien. If so, stay tuned to hear Lauren's journey to journalist. So hello, Lauren.
Hi.
Thank you so much for coming on today's episode. Can you start with just letting the viewers know a little bit about yourself?
Hi everyone, my name is Lauren Wharton. I'm 25 years old, originally from Bowie, Maryland. I'm a proud Spelman College graduate, class of 2012, where I majored in political science and writing, and directly after that I went to NYU for graduate school and got my master's in journalism. And currently I'm a health communications writer at a company called Bain & Communications.
So Lauren, let's start with, how do you define journalism and what type of people pursue this field?
So I would define journalism as everything that you see around you and the way that it's communicated. So it could be something as simple as a local fire, at a local elementary school, or at the national level, a presidential election because we're in election year, or even, a global level, it's the Zika virus and different outbreaks that are happening, worldwide. And to me, the type of people that become journalists are people that are curious about the world and about how we interact with it and how we process some of the things that we're seeing.
What inspired you to pursue this field, and when did you know this was the right path for you?
Growing up, I saw my parents read everything. Magazines, books, newspapers, just different things like that. And then we watched the news a lot. I watched the news during breakfast, I watched the news during dinner, and I found myself regurgitating news stories to adults. And I could literally have full-blown conversations. What was happening in Iran at the time, what was happening in South America at the time. And then I would go to school and I would ask myself, you don't know this? Or I'm trying to have a conversation that I would have with a 30-year-old, with a 10-year-old, and it wasn't really working. And when I went to Spelman, initially I was an English major because I was pursuing law, but at the end of my freshman year, I went to a journalism event, and I was hearing the interactions that we were having with panelists and audience members, and I heard somebody make a comment that a journalist that I really looked up to growing up wasn't black enough to do a job. And it struck me because being black and being a woman are two things that are so important to me. And at that point, I knew to myself, I would never let somebody tell me that I wasn't black enough or I wasn't woman enough to do a job. And thinking about just different interactions that I've had with journalism, it was something that was always so deep inside of me, and I just needed it to come out. And I think that that was a defining moment because in the grand scheme of everything, I knew that ultimately I wanted to change the perceptions of people of color in front of the camera. And to me, I thought that the way that you could do that is behind the scenes and behind the camera. So at that point, after that interaction, I just did whatever I needed to do to make that happen.
So let's get into a little bit about the journalist. What is a skill set do you think most journalists need?
Curiosity is something that's really important. Integrity, you need to be very integral with your sources. You need to also to be very honest and very truthful, because especially when you're interviewing somebody about something that's difficult to talk about, or it might be a sore spot for them or a very painful moment, you want them to be able to open up to you without seeming disingenuous, which is really important.
So empathy is
empathy is one, and I would also say you have to have a lot of strength because you're going to be told no. That could be you pitching a story to a publication, they don't like it. That could be you trying to track down somebody, they slam the door on your face, or they just left 5 minutes before you got there. You can't take no for an answer. And for me, that was something that really has carried me throughout Spelman and NYU and even in the workforce.
So all jobs, of course, have difficulties.
Right.
So tell us a little bit about the challenges journalists have to overcome.
So I think it depends on the story that you're working on, but then it also depends on the publication that you're working for or the outlet, because I was working for a major outlet that I had interned for actually in school, and I began working at this company directly out of graduate school. And when I was still in New York, then I moved down here to Atlanta, and I felt that I was compromising some of my values and some of my morals in the reporting that the organization was doing. And it came to a point where I could no longer look myself in the mirror because I wasn't reporting on stories that I genuinely cared about. And I felt like we were ignoring a complete subset of people because I'm very passionate about minorities and people of color and disenfranchised communities, and we weren't covering those stories at all. Or if we did, it was from, to me, the wrong lens, which is really important to look at when you're doing journalism.
All right, so you found it pretty difficult to not, I guess, have as much voice.
Right.
as you could in your writing.
Right, and the creativity as well, because when I did NYU, I did a global journalism program, and I reported on maternal mortality in New York City. And that was something that I was very passionate about, and I was really passionate about women's issues, and I was trying to figure out, well, why are women of color mainly dying in New York City in the process of giving birth? And which trickled into public health, which is somewhat of what I'm doing now. But I knew that like stories like that were happening, but we weren't talking about them.
Right.
And just because we don't talk about them doesn't mean that they're not happening.
Right.
And once again, that was something that I really struggled with, because I knew that the world is so vast and so many things are happening. And unless you really dig out and really search for certain sources, you're only going to see what CBS reports on, or what CNN reports on, or what Fox reports on.
So you attended the renowned New York University and received your master's degree in journalism. So tell us a little bit about what you spent most of your time doing as a student.
So I did a global journalism program, but it was a joint program.
Okay.
So I received my master's in both journalism and Africana studies, because those were two things I was very interested in. And I found a program that just completely blended both of my professional and academic interests. And from there, I did a lot of researching and writing. And this program was very print-centered, but at that time, I thought I wanted to do broadcast. So I tried to, take broadcast classes when I could. But a lot of the classes that I took were very print-centered. And looking back, I really enjoyed those classes, and it helped me become a better writer in the end. And then when you're in any master's program, for the most part, you're doing a graduate thesis.
Right.
So I did a 7,000-word piece on maternal mortality in New York City, because I was really interested in women's issues and women's health and things like that. And that's why I chose the topic that I chose.
Okay, so most of your time spent researching, writing, and interviewing. So although you have a master's in journalism, is a degree in that really necessary to become a journalist?
I think it's a case-by-case situation, and I think it's contingent upon the person and their specific skill sets.
Okay.
So because I did political science in undergrad, I had done an internship at a cable company, a radio company, and a major broadcast news organization when I graduated.
Right.
And I had a job offer from that company, but NYU actually came in first with a better offer, so that's the offer that I took.
Right.
But I'm glad that I made the decision that I did, because I didn't stay in, hard news per se. And having a master's degree made me that much more competitive. But say somebody did journalism all 4 years in undergrad, it might not be necessary. But for me, it definitely gave me the confidence, the skill set, and also the name to make myself that much more marketable when the time came to enter the professional field.
Okay. So would you say that journalism is pretty much a relationship business?
Absolutely. I don't know if you've heard this saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Of course.
Of course. So a lot of times, what you know will get you into the door, it'll get you an interview, but who you know will keep you there.
Okay.
And it's all about that networking, the networking that's happening, different conversations that you're having with people, expressing what your interests are, different things that you want to learn, showing that you're eager and you're open. Those are definitely things that'll help you. And then even in the same way, when you think about who your sources are. So sometimes you might go back to the same source multiple times if you're working on a long form piece, or if you're working on a documentary or something like that.
Right.
If you have that honest relationship with somebody, and they can tell that you're not being disingenuous and you're very genuine with your intentions, it'll definitely help you in the long run.
Okay. So Lauren, let me get a couple of tips from you now. What are 5 steps to becoming a journalist?
5 steps to becoming a journalist. Number 1, be yourself. Number 2, be very genuine and be very honest. Number 3 is networking. Number 4 is gaining all the experience that you can.
Okay.
And number 5 is to trust your gut.
Okay.
And that can be something as simple as, you know what, I think I can push a little bit harder on this question. Or that person may seem like they're not being quite honest. Or I feel like if I come back tomorrow, they might give me the answer that I'm looking for.
Right.
It's just, it's self-reliance, honestly.
So really, and on top of that, you need to be pretty skilled at writing, right?
Yeah, you have to be, because I was always editing people's work. I was always writing my own or reviewing something. I can instantly tell when a contraction's not in the right place, or when a comma's wrong, or somebody forgets a period, especially on social media when I see posts. So it's something as simple as that, because you want to be able to really hone in on something and own it.
Right.
And for me, it's writing, because that's what I'm doing every single day. at my job.
So what are some ways to staying up to date on national news as well as international news?
I would definitely suggest that you subscribe to different publications and get daily alerts. Sometimes they have hourly alerts. They have daily briefings, nightly briefings, and things like that. Because whatever you decide that you want to focus on, especially if you're doing more niche writing like music, arts, culture, food, different things like that, you want to make sure that you're following the top publications. And especially even on social media, because sometimes they'll break the story before a larger organization will break it.
Of course.
And it's just really good to always be in the know, because you want to be so well versed and be able to communicate or even just research just different topics and just have that knowledge for yourself. Because a lot of times certain publications will just give you the top, like just the baseline. But it's really up to you to dig deeper and to really find out the background of the story, why opposing sides are saying certain things, looking at different briefings or legal matters or just things like that, to really not take what the headline says and really make certain decisions for yourself.
So Lauren, let's say I'm a freshman. I know I want to be a journalist. I'm for sure. What should I start doing from day one?
From Jump Street, I would definitely say decide what your major is going to be, but then also look to see, all right, what are some writing classes that I can take? Who are some professors that I can get to know? What publications can I write for locally, even if it's a college newspaper or something like that. And even if they have a small television station or something, get all the experience that you can. Go to networking events. That's something that I really did in college. Join local clubs, and a lot of times they have membership fees that are reduced because you're in college, and it's a great way to get to know people, get to know how they started, and that's something else that I think is a really good way for you to kind of get your foot in the door. It's just to have like that one tool that you always have in your arsenal. And for me, it was, so tell me about your path to journalism, because everybody's path is going to be different. Everybody's journey to journalism is so different.
So Lauren, my last question is just going to be simply, what advice do you have for all those future journalists out there?
Be yourself and trust your gut, because as creative as I am, as outspoken as I am, I've interned and worked for top news organizations and helped them make certain decisions about different things. And if I didn't rely on myself, and if I didn't trust myself or trust my gut, I would not have made it this far. And then also having a very tough skin. That's something that I just kind of grew up with, but it's really helped me in the long run, because you're going to be in difficult situations. People will tear your articles apart, your videos apart. And if you really internalize it and say that, and internalize it as if they're attacking you as a person, they're not attacking your work, literally journalism is a very brutal industry, and it will eat you alive.
So you have to have tough skin.
You have to have tough skin. You have to. And then also find that creative outlet for you. So if it's cooking, I like to cook, I like to travel, I like to read. Do what makes you happy. On your downtime, because when you're working a lot of hours, I had a very strenuous schedule before, and I was working overnights and I was working weekends and things like that. When I was off, and I did things that I really enjoyed to feed my soul back, because when you're pouring so much out of yourself, you need something to be poured back into you. And that's what I found myself doing.
Okay, well, great. Well, Lauren, thank you so much for joining today's episode.
Welcome.
So just tell us briefly, what's next on your journey?
So what's next on my journey? Right now, I'm a health communications writer, and now I'm doing journalism, but in public health, if that makes sense. And I want to continue that journey and to really find what my specialty is and what that niche is within public health, and really hone in on those communication skills and help organizations disseminate vital information to help people.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for watching today's episode. We hope that you learned so much about journalism today. If there are any comments or questions for Lauren, just leave them below and we'll make sure that they get answered. All right, thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.